Now let's learn about persistent volumes. So persistent volumes allows us to store data beyond pod life cycle. If a pod fails or dies or moves to a different node, it doesn't matter. The data is still intact and can be shared between pods. Now, when it comes to persistent volumes, we have a couple of types. So Kubernetes basically supports NFS. You can have local persistent volumes and also cloud storage, right? So this is where, for example, you're running Kubernetes on AWS, then you get the EBS, so Amazon Elastic Block Storage, or if you're running on Azure, you get Azure File Storage and disk storage as well. Or if you're running on GCP or Google Cloud, you get Google Persistent Disk. Now, with persistent volumes, it's done through plugins. So basically, the different types are implemented as plugins, and Kubernetes currently supports the following plugins. So here's a list of all the plugins, and this is taken by their website. And you can see, for example, AWS, Azure, you can see Google Cloud, host path. So for single node testing only, it will not work for multi-node. Local, so this is where you have local storage. NFS, so network file system, so on and so forth. Now, the way it works is that, let's say that you're running Kubernetes on EKS or Amazon, right? So here you have the Elastic Block Storage, so EBS. So this is how you basically have a place to store data, right? So this is your storage provider. Then with Kubernetes, we have something called Container Storage Interface. Now, this interface is what providers have to implement. So in this case, we have the AWS EBS plugin. So basically, the provider implements the interface, and that in itself gives us something called persistent volume. Now, a persistent volume really in Kubernetes is basically the mapping between the storage provider, so the actual data block, right, to the Kubernetes land. Now, the way it works is we have a pod, and if the pod wants to consume the volume, we have to use something called persistent volume claim. So this is cool. Next, let me go ahead and talk about the persistent volume subsystem before we see everything in action.